All right, everybody. So it's been a couple days, but here's what we're talking about today: justice. We're going to talk about what is justice from a biblical perspective. How should Christians think about justice? You know, social justice and injustice are things that are talked about a lot in our social and secular media and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's important for us as followers of Christ to have a grasp on what God's justice actually is and what it looks like. So Romans chapter 3, starting in verse 21. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe, for there is no distinction. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift, through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a propitiation by his blood, to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. It was to show his righteousness as at the present time, so that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. So, it's thrown out there that social justice and justice are gospel issues. These are important things that pertain to the gospel itself. And I think it's rightly stated when we talk about justice being intrinsic to the gospel itself. Paul makes the statement that we are justified by grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. And it states at the end of this particular passage, it was to show his righteousness at the present time, so that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus Christ. So here, from a biblical perspective, really quickly, is this: justification and justice in God's economy, in God's sight, is simply this: all who have sinned, which is every single person other than Jesus himself, are made just or made right before God by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ alone. Sinners are pardoned through Christ. So while apart from Christ we are separated from God, and it would be just for him to execute his wrath and judgment on every single person right now in this moment, he made a way to make us right with him, to bring us back to him, to make us just, to stand as righteous before him through Jesus Christ. This should shed a light on how we view justice, so that he might be the just and the justifier. That this kind of language and this kind of mindset is simply this: our job, Micah 6 tells us, he's shown you, O man, what is good, but to to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before God. We as representatives of God are to seek justice on behalf of people who are oppressed. We're to care for orphans and widows, and to defend and stand up for the defenseless, those who cannot speak for themselves. As followers of Christ, that's what we're called to do, to seek justice. And unfortunately, the term social justice and these ideas of being woke, often they're not really actually concerned with justice. They're more concerned with political agendas and ideologies. The Black Lives Matter organization, the organization, not the statement itself, but Black Lives Matter organization, if you look up what they're promoting and the movements that they're trying to create, they're not really concerned with caring for people and seeking justice at all. They don't really actually have, if you look at their statements, they don't have a concern for human life and dignity at all. And so for us to seek justice means that we actually stand up for those who are oppressed, those who are hurting from birth, or actually from conception to the grave, or from womb to tomb, as it's often stated. We actually care about life, and we actually seek justice and righteousness to be revealed and to be promoted. And so this should cause us to use discernment to seek how to pursue justice wisely in these regards. Now, again, I'm not going to take all the time in these videos to really unpack all of that, But if we're going to understand what justice looks like, we have to understand it from God's perspective. We have to understand it from how God sees it. And for us, justice in God's eyes, it is intrinsic in the gospel. God makes rebellious sinners righteous in his sight. He justifies people through the cross, through the crucifixion of Christ. So at a very, at least basic understanding level, we need to grasp this concept, that one is made just with God, made right with God, made righteous in his sight, legally free and legally uncondemned in God's sight by the cross of Jesus Christ and by faith in him alone.